The crystal spires of Valkyr Prime reached toward 3 purple moons, their surfaces reflecting the light of twin suns that never set on the capital world. Queen Zara stood on the highest balcony of her palace, her translucent blue form shimmering as gravity itself bent around her presence. She was beautiful in the way that dangerous things could be beautiful, sharp edges and flowing energy that could crush starships or caress flower petals with equal ease. 2 years had passed since the human arrived. Zara remembered that day clearly. Tom's small trading vessel had tumbled through Valkorian space like a broken bird, engines dead and life support failing. Her patrol ships could have let him drift into the void. Most species would have. Humans were barely known in this part of the galaxy, considered primitive creatures who had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. But something about the distress signal had made Zara order the rescue herself. When they brought Tom before her throne, dirty and exhausted from his ordeal, he had not fallen to his knees like every other being who entered her presence. He had not begged for mercy or tried to offer tribute. Instead, he had looked directly at her with calm brown eyes and said simply, "Thank you for saving my life." The court had gasped. No one looked directly at Queen Zara without permission. The gravity field around her throne typically forced visitors to their knees automatically. Yet this small human stood upright, unaffected, meeting her gaze with genuine gratitude instead of fear. "You are far from your home, human," Zara had said, curious about this strange visitor. "Yes, my ship had engine trouble. I was trying to reach the neutral trading station at Kepler 7. Tom's voice carried no deception, no hidden agenda. "I can work to pay for repairs and supplies. I'm good with mechanical systems and growing things." General Vex, her most trusted military advisor, had stepped forward then. His armored form gleamed black and silver, and his 4 arms crossed in clear disapproval. "My queen, this creature cannot remain here. Humans are weak and short-lived. They have no useful skills for our empire." Zara had studied Tom carefully. Something about his quiet confidence intrigued her. Most beings either cowered before her power or tried to impress her with their own abilities. This human did neither. He simply waited, patient and respectful, for her decision. "You may stay until your ship is repaired," she had announced, ignoring Vex's shocked expression. "We will find work suitable for your abilities." That had been the beginning. Tom had been given quarters in the lower levels of the palace, far from the royal chambers where Zara lived. He worked in the maintenance sections, helping repair atmospheric processors and tending the vast hydroponic gardens that fed the palace staff. The work was simple, far below what most beings would consider worthy of the royal palace, but Tom approached every task with the same quiet focus. The Valkorian nobles found his presence amusing at first. They would visit the gardens just to see the strange human who talked to plants as if they were old friends. Some tried to test his reactions, speaking about him as if he were not there, describing humans as barely evolved animals who would be extinct within a few centuries. Tom never responded to their insults. He simply continued his work, coaxing remarkable growth from plants that had struggled under previous caretakers. Within months, the palace gardens were producing twice their normal yields, and the air throughout the complex smelled cleaner and fresher. Zara began visiting the gardens herself. At first, she told herself it was simply to inspect the improved food production. The gardens were more efficient now, which was good for the palace economy. But soon she realized she was going there to watch Tom work. There was something peaceful about the way he moved among the growing things, never hurried but never idle, always knowing exactly what each plant needed. "Your Majesty," Tom would say when he noticed her presence, straightening up from whatever plant he was tending. "Is there something you need from the gardens today?" "I am simply inspecting the facilities," Zara would reply, though they both knew this was not entirely true. Their conversations began simply. Tom would explain what he was growing, why certain plants needed specific nutrients, how the hydroponic systems could be improved for better efficiency. Zara found herself genuinely interested in his explanations. Most of her subjects spoke to her in formal, elaborate language full of titles and ceremony. Tom spoke directly, using simple words to explain complex ideas. The root systems are like networks, he said one day, showing her how different plants could share nutrients through connected growing medium. When one plant has extra resources, it can help support others that need more. They work together instead of competing. An interesting concept, Zara mused. Most species we encounter believe only in competition. The strong survive by consuming the weak. Some humans think that way too, Tom admitted, carefully adjusting water flow to a section of green leafy vegetables. But I think cooperation makes everyone stronger in the long run. Plants that help each other can survive things that would kill individual plants. These conversations continued for months. Zara found herself spending more and more time in the gardens, discussing not just plants but philosophy, history, and the nature of leadership. Tom's perspectives were unlike anything she had encountered. Where most beings saw the universe in terms of power and conquest, Tom saw patterns of cooperation and mutual benefit. General Vex began to express concern. "My queen," he said during a private meeting in her war room, "the court is beginning to talk about your frequent visits to the gardens. Some question whether this human has somehow influenced your judgment." Zara's gravity field flickered with annoyance. "Are you suggesting that I am not capable of making my own decisions, General?" "Of course not, Majesty." Vex bowed his 4 arms respectfully. "But this human is a distraction. You have responsibilities to the Empire that require your full attention. The Outer Systems report increased pirate activity, and our intelligence suggests the hegemony may be planning territorial expansion. The Empire runs efficiently whether I spend time in gardens or war rooms," Zara replied coldly. "Do not presume to manage my schedule." But Vex's warnings reflected growing sentiment among the nobility. They whispered that their immortal queen was becoming too fascinated with a creature who would die of old age in mere decades. Some suggested that Tom might be using unknown human technologies to influence her mind. Others worried that her interest in his peaceful philosophies would make her soft in dealing with threats to the Empire. The whispers reached Zara's attention, but they only strengthened her resolve. She had ruled the Valkorian Empire for 3 centuries, expanding its territory across multiple star systems through careful strategy and decisive action. No one could question her competence or dedication to her people. If she chose to spend time with an interesting visitor, that was her privilege as queen. Her visits to the gardens became longer and more frequent. She and Tom would walk among the growing plants, their conversations ranging across countless topics. Tom told her about Earth, his homeworld, describing vast oceans and forests under a single yellow sun. Zara shared stories of her early years as queen, the challenges of uniting the Valkorian systems under single rule. "Leadership must be lonely," Tom observed one day as they watched the sunset paint the crystal spires in shades of gold and purple. "Why do you say that?" Zara asked. "Everyone around you wants something. They fear your power or they want to use it for their own purposes. It would be hard to know who you could really trust." Zara considered this. In 3 centuries of rule, she could count on one hand the number of beings who had spoken to her without agenda or fear. Tom was the first person in decades to see her as something other than a force of nature to be appeased or manipulated. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "that is why I value our conversations." The moment was interrupted by General Vex's arrival. His heavy footsteps announced his presence long before he appeared on the garden path, and his expression showed clear disapproval at finding his queen in yet another private discussion with the human. "Majesty, the High Council requires your presence for urgent security briefings," he announced formally. "Very well." Zara turned to Tom. "We will continue this conversation later." As she walked away with Vex, she heard the general's voice drop to what he probably thought was a whisper. "This obsession with the human is becoming a security concern, Majesty. The nobles begin to question your judgment, and our enemies may see any perceived weakness as an opportunity." "Let them question," Zara replied, her voice carrying the edge that had cowed rebellions and conquered systems. "I am still the same queen who built this empire. One human visitor changes nothing about my ability to rule. But even as she spoke the words, Zara knew they were not entirely true. Tom was changing something about her, though she could not yet name what it was. His presence brought a peace she had never experienced, a sense of possibility that went beyond conquest and control. For the first time in centuries, she found herself thinking about what life might be like beyond the constant demands of empire. That night, alone in her crystal chambers high above the capital, Zara made a decision that would shock the entire Valkorian court. The next morning, she summoned Tom to her private audience chamber. When he arrived, still dressed in his simple work clothes and smelling faintly of the hydroponic nutrients, she stood before her throne rather than sitting on it. "Tom of Earth," she said formally, "I have a proposal for you." He waited quietly, those calm brown eyes focused on her face with the same genuine attention he had shown from their first meeting. "Become my consort," she said simply. "Share the royal chambers and help me rule this empire." The silence stretched between them for long moments. Finally, Tom spoke. "Are you certain this is what you want, Zara? Your people will not understand. I'm not immortal like you. I'm not powerful like your nobles. I can't even survive in space without life support." "I am certain," she replied. "In 3 centuries of rule, you are the first person to see me as myself rather than as a force to be feared or used. That is worth more than all the power in the galaxy." Tom smiled then, the first truly happy expression she had seen on his face since his arrival. "Then yes," he said. "I would be honored." The announcement sent shockwaves through the Valkorian Empire that would take years to fully settle. 6 months had passed since Queen Zara announced her marriage to Tom, and the Valkorian Empire still buzzed with shock and disapproval. The royal wedding had been a grand affair, witnessed by representatives from dozens of worlds, but the celebration could not hide the tension that rippled through the court like electricity before a storm. Tom had adapted to palace life with the same quiet grace he brought to everything else. He learned the formal protocols required of a royal consort, though he never quite lost the habit of speaking directly rather than using the flowery language preferred by nobles. He continued working in the gardens during the mornings, now expanded to include rare plants from across the empire, and spent afternoons learning about Valkorian history and interstellar politics. The nobles watched him constantly, waiting for mistakes that never came. Tom handled every royal function with calm dignity, never trying to insert himself into political discussions but always paying careful attention when Zara explained the complexities of governing multiple star systems. "He studies everything," General Vex complained during a private meeting with several high-ranking officers. "The human watches our military briefings, reads our strategic reports, observes our fleet movements. How do we know he is not gathering intelligence for some human organization?" Commander Thale, head of palace security, nodded agreement. "His quarters contain detailed notes about our defensive capabilities." When questioned, he claims he is simply trying to understand his new home, but the documentation is very thorough. "Perhaps too thorough for a simple trader," added Admiral Orcs, commander of the Third Fleet. "No civilian needs such detailed knowledge of military operations." But their suspicions seemed unfounded. Tom made no attempt to communicate with other humans or transmit information beyond Valkorian space. He appeared genuinely devoted to Zara and committed to his role as consort. Still, the military leadership remained uncomfortable with his presence during sensitive discussions. The discomfort became irrelevant when the first emergency reports arrived from the outer systems. Deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures moving through the void between galaxies. The readings were unlike anything in Valkorian records, not the controlled fusion signatures of known starship designs, but something older and far more powerful. Long-range sensors painted a terrifying picture, hundreds of enormous objects moving in perfect formation toward inhabited space. "The energy output from these objects exceeds anything we have ever encountered," reported Chief Science Officer Nara during an emergency council session. "Each individual signature is larger than our biggest dreadnoughts, and our computers count over 1,000 separate contacts." Zara studied the holographic display showing the approaching fleet. The objects moved in geometric patterns that suggested intelligence and purpose, but their design was completely foreign. How long until they reach our territory? At current speed, approximately 6 standard months, Majesty, Nara replied. However, the objects appear to be accelerating. If they continue to increase velocity, they could arrive in half that time. General Vex stepped forward, his 4 arms gesturing at the tactical displays. We must assume hostile intent and begin mobilizing our forces immediately. The 3rd and 7th fleets should be recalled from patrol duties and positioned at strategic defensive points. Agreed, Zara said, her gravity field flickering with the stress of sudden crisis. Begin full military preparations. I want our best ships positioned between these unknowns and our populated worlds. Throughout the meeting, Tom sat quietly in his designated chair near the back of the council chamber. As royal consort, he was permitted to observe military briefings, but protocol demanded that he remain silent unless directly addressed. He studied the holographic displays with the same focused attention he brought to his garden work, occasionally making small notes on a personal data pad. Admiral Corks noticed the note-taking and frowned. Your Majesty, perhaps sensitive military information should be restricted to essential personnel only. Zara's crystalline form turned sharp edges toward the Admiral. Are you suggesting that my husband cannot be trusted with information about threats to his own home? Of course not, Majesty, Corks backtracked quickly. I simply meant that operational security requires careful consideration of who has access to strategic intelligence. Tom stays, Zara declared firmly. Continue the briefing. As reports continued to arrive over the following weeks, the situation grew more ominous. The approaching objects were definitely artificial constructs, massive beyond anything the Valkorians had ever built. Closer examination revealed intricate details suggesting technology far beyond current galactic civilizations. More disturbing were the historical references that Valkorian scholars began uncovering in ancient archives. Fragmentary records from civilizations that had vanished millennia ago mentioned similar objects, vast mechanical entities that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but empty space. The old texts call them devourers, explained Master Historian Zek during a somber briefing 3 months after the first detection. According to these fragments, they appear every few thousand years, harvest whatever civilizations they encounter, then disappear back into the void between galaxies. Harvest? Zara asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Complete consumption, Majesty. Populations, resources, even planetary mass, everything absorbed to fuel their continued existence. The records suggest they are not merely destructive but actually require organic and mineral matter to maintain themselves. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They were facing an enemy that would not be satisfied with conquest or tribute. The devourers apparently existed only to consume, turning entire civilizations into fuel for their own survival. What happened to the civilizations that left these records? Tom asked quietly from his position at the back of the room. Master Historian Zek turned to look at him with surprise. Royal consorts rarely spoke during military briefings. The records end abruptly, Consort. We assume those civilizations were completely destroyed. Were there any accounts of successful resistance? Tom continued, his voice calm but intent. Any descriptions of effective weapons or defensive strategies? None that we have discovered, Zek admitted. Though our archives may be incomplete. General Vex stepped forward with obvious impatience. With respect, Majesty, we cannot base military strategy on ancient fragments and speculation. We must focus on our current capabilities and how to deploy them effectively against this threat. But Tom's questions had touched on something important. Over the following days, research teams scoured every available historical database, searching for any information about previous devourer encounters. The few fragments they found painted a consistent picture of overwhelming defeat. Civilizations with massive fleets and powerful weapons simply vanished, leaving behind only empty worlds stripped of all life and resources. The first actual contact came 2 months earlier than projected. Long-range patrol ships reported contact with the leading edge of the Devourer fleet near the abandoned mining system of Kepler-Taurus. The initial reports were calm and professional, standard first contact protocols being followed despite the ominous nature of the approaching entities. Then the communication stopped. Admiral Orcs, report on the patrol squadron, Zara commanded during an emergency session called within hours of losing contact. No response to any communication attempts, Majesty, Orcs replied grimly. Long-range sensors show the patrol ships are no longer present in the Kepler-Taurus system. Destroyed? Unknown. There are no debris fields, no energy signatures indicating weapons fire. The ships simply are not there anymore. Tom leaned forward slightly in his chair. What about the planets in that system? Are they still present? Admiral Orcs checked his displays with growing alarm. Negative, consort. Planetary masses are gone as well. The entire system appears to have been stripped clean except for the central star. The magnitude of the threat became clear. The Devourers had consumed an entire star system in a matter of hours, removing not just life but the very matter that composed planets and asteroids. Facing such power, conventional military thinking seemed inadequate. We need to evacuate the outer colonies immediately, General Vex declared. Fall back to more defensible positions around our core worlds. Evacuation ships could never move entire planetary populations quickly enough, Admiral Orcs pointed out. And we have no guarantee that our core worlds would be any safer. Then what do you suggest? Zara asked, her gravity field crackling with stress and frustration. We fight, Vex replied grimly. Deploy our full fleet strength in defensive formations. Make them pay for every system they take. Tom cleared his throat softly. When the room turned to look at him, he spoke carefully. The pattern of their approach suggests they are not randomly consuming systems. They appear to be following specific routes through inhabited space, focusing on areas with higher population density. What are you suggesting? General Vex asked with barely concealed irritation. Perhaps we could predict their movement patterns, Tom said. If we understand what they are targeting, we might be able to prepare more effective defenses or find ways to deny them what they seek. The human has a point, admitted Chief Science Officer Nara. Their approach vectors do show clear preferences for systems with established civilizations rather than empty space. But before any strategic planning could be implemented, the Devourers accelerated their advance. 3 more star systems disappeared over the following week. Each vanished the same way, patrol ships reported contact, then all communication ceased. When follow-up vessels arrived, they found nothing but empty space around solitary stars. The speed of consumption was terrifying. Entire worlds with billions of inhabitants simply ceased to exist within hours of first contact. No distress signals, no reports of battle, just sudden silence followed by complete absence. Panic began spreading through the Valkorian Empire. Outer colonies demanded immediate evacuation. Inner worlds hoarded resources and prepared for siege. The military struggled to maintain order while preparing for an enemy unlike anything they had ever faced. Our weapons are useless, Admiral Orcs reported after reviewing all available intelligence. These entities consume matter itself. Energy weapons would likely just provide them with additional fuel. Then how do we fight them? Zara demanded. I do not know, Majesty, Orcs admitted. Our entire military doctrine assumes enemies that can be damaged by conventional weapons. The Devourers appear to be beyond such concerns. Throughout these desperate meetings, Tom continued taking his careful notes and asking occasional questions. His observations often revealed important details that military officers missed, patterns in Devourer behavior that suggested underlying logic to their consumption methods. But his insights were increasingly dismissed as the situation grew more desperate. General Vex and his staff had no patience for theoretical analysis when entire civilizations were being erased from existence. We need immediate action, not philosophical discussions, Vex declared after Tom suggested studying the timing patterns of Devourer attacks. Every hour we spend in debate, more worlds disappear. The crisis deepened when the Devourers reached the edge of core Valkorian territory. The first major colony to face them was New Valkor, a prosperous world with over 2 billion inhabitants. Queen Zara deployed her finest battle group to defend the planet, led by Admiral Korks himself aboard the flagship Eternal Storm. The battle lasted 17 minutes. Admiral Korks's final transmission was brief and desperate: "They are not ships, Majesty. They are something else entirely. Our weapons pass right through them. They are drawing power from our own energy systems. We cannot stop them. Tell my family I died trying to protect." Then silence. Within 6 hours, New Valkor had joined the growing list of consumed worlds. 2 billion people and an entire planet, gone as if they had never existed. For the first time in 3 centuries of rule, Queen Zara felt the cold touch of true fear. The Devourer fleet reached the inner systems of the Valkorian Empire like a plague of mechanical locusts. 7 worlds had already vanished completely, consumed so thoroughly that not even debris remained in orbit around their stars. The surviving population centers were in full panic as refugees flooded toward the capital world, carrying stories of unstoppable entities that ate planets whole. Queen Zara stood in her command center, watching tactical displays that painted an increasingly hopeless picture. Her remaining fleets were positioned in defensive formations around Valkor Prime, but every military advisor knew the truth they dared not speak aloud: they had no weapons capable of stopping the Devourers. "Status report," she commanded, her crystalline form crackling with barely controlled energy. General Vex stepped forward, his 4 arms crossed in grim resignation. "The 4th and 6th fleets are in position at the outer defense perimeter. The 2nd fleet holds the middle zone around the 3 moons. Our planetary shields are at maximum power, though previous evidence suggests they will provide minimal protection. Enemy disposition. The Devourer fleet has completed consumption of the tertiary system and is approaching our outer perimeter. Long-range sensors count 1,237 individual entities, each measuring between 5 and 15 kilometers in length." The numbers were overwhelming. Even if Valkorian weapons could damage the Devourers, the sheer size and quantity of the enemy fleet made victory impossible through conventional military action. "Time until contact with our outer defenses?" Zara asked. 14 hours, Majesty," replied Admiral Jan, the new fleet commander who had replaced the lost Admiral Korks. "Should we begin evacuation of non-essential personnel from the capital?" "Where would they evacuate to?" Zara asked bitterly. "The Devourers will consume this entire system whether we resist or flee. At least here we can face them with some dignity." Throughout this exchange, Tom sat quietly in his usual position at the back of the command center. His presence had become a source of increasing irritation to the military staff, who viewed him as a useless distraction during their final hours. He continued taking notes on his personal data pad, occasionally studying the tactical displays with intense focus. "Your Majesty," General Vex said carefully, "perhaps the royal family should withdraw to the deep bunkers while the fleet engages the enemy. There may be some small chance of survival if the palace core systems can be protected." "I will not hide in bunkers while my people face extinction," Zara replied firmly. "We stand together or we fall together." Tom looked up from his data pad. "Zara, I need to ask you something important." The command staff turned to stare at him in shock. Royal protocol demanded that he address the Queen as "Your Majesty" during formal military sessions, and he had never before interrupted a strategic planning meeting. "What is it, Tom?" Zara asked, her tone gentler than protocol required. "I need temporary command authorization for a single ship," Tom said simply. "There is a vessel in the outer system that I need to bring into the battle zone." General Vex's reaction was explosive. "Absolutely not. We cannot waste military resources on civilian evacuation schemes. Every ship must be positioned for maximum defensive effectiveness." "What ship are you referring to?" Zara asked, ignoring Vex's outburst. "A human vessel that arrived in the system 3 days ago," Tom explained. It has been holding position near the 7th planet, waiting for my signal. Admiral Yan checked his fleet registers with confusion. There are no human ships listed in our current system inventory. All civilian traffic was diverted or evacuated weeks ago. The ship is operating under stealth protocols, Tom said calmly. It will not appear on your standard sensors unless I activate its transponder. Stealth protocols? General Vex demanded. What kind of civilian trader has access to military-grade stealth technology? Tom stood up slowly, his data pad still in his hands. For the first time since arriving in Valkorian space 2 years ago, his expression carried something other than quiet patience. That is what I need to explain to you. He touched a control on his data pad. Instantly, every display in the command center shifted to show a new contact appearing near the 7th planet. The energy signature that bloomed on their sensors was unlike anything in Valkorian records, not the fusion drives of known technology, but something far more advanced. My name is Tom Chen, he said, his voice carrying new authority that made everyone in the command center stop and listen. I am a field agent of the Human Defense Network, assigned to monitor Station Gamma 7 with responsibility for tracking cosmic-level threats in this galactic sector. The silence in the command center was absolute. Zara stared at her husband as if seeing him for the first time. The Human Defense Network has been operating in this galaxy for over 3,000 years, Tom continued. Our mission is to identify and neutralize threats that could destabilize developing civilizations or cause mass extinction events. The Devourer entities are one such threat. That is impossible, General Vex declared. Humans are primitive. Your species only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last few centuries. Tom smiled sadly. That is what we want younger civilizations to believe. The truth is that humanity reached technological maturity approximately 5,000 years ago. We learned that advanced civilizations tend to either become conquerors or targets for other advanced species. So we chose a third option. He gestured to the tactical displays, where his ship's signature pulsed steadily near the outer planet. We maintain hidden monitoring stations throughout inhabited space. When cosmic threats like the Devourers awaken, we respond quietly and efficiently. Most civilizations never know they were in danger. Why? Zara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why hide? Why not reveal your capabilities and work openly with other species? Because visible power attracts challenges, Tom explained. Advanced civilizations either fear what they cannot control or try to acquire what they cannot understand. By remaining hidden, we can protect thousands of developing species without triggering galactic warfare or technological arms races. Admiral Yan studied the readings from Tom's ship with growing amazement. The energy output from that vessel exceeds our largest dreadnought by a factor of 50. What kind of weapons system requires that much power? Not weapons in the traditional sense, Tom replied. The Devourers are not biological entities that can be killed, and they are not mechanical constructs that can be destroyed. They are quantum consciousness matrices sustained by harmonic resonance fields. To stop them, you have to disrupt the frequency patterns that bind their awareness to physical reality. He looked directly at Zara, his brown eyes filled with an emotion she could not identify. I came to Valkorian space 2 years ago because our deep monitors detected early signs of Devourer awakening. My mission was to study their approach patterns and prepare countermeasures. I was supposed to observe quietly, then leave before making contact with local populations. But you stayed, Zara said, understanding beginning to dawn. I stayed because I fell in love with you, Tom said simply. Not because of your power or position, but because of your wisdom and strength and the way you care for your people. I broke every protocol of the defense network to remain here. The command center erupted in alarms as long-range sensors detected the leading edge of the Devourer fleet entering the outer system. The massive entities moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls drinking in starlight as they approached the Valkorian defensive perimeter. Contact in 6 hours, Admiral Yan reported grimly. All defensive systems are online and ready. Tom turned to Zara with desperate urgency. I need that command authorization now. My ship can stop the Devourers, but only if I can position it correctly before they engage your fleet. General Vex stepped forward aggressively. Even if this story is true, how do we know this human can be trusted? He has deceived us for 2 years. Why should we believe he wants to help us now? Because this is my home, Tom said firmly. These are my people now. I will not let the Devourers consume the civilization I have sworn to protect. Zara studied her husband's face for a long moment, searching for any sign of deception. She found only determination and genuine concern for her people's survival. Authorization granted, she declared. Admiral Yan, provide full tactical support for Consort Tom's vessel. Majesty, this is extremely irregular, General Vex protested. We are trusting our entire civilization to one human with an unverified story and unexplained technology. We are trusting our civilization to my husband, Zara replied coldly. If you cannot accept my judgment, you may withdraw from the command center. Tom was already activating controls on his data pad, sending coded signals to his hidden ship. On the tactical displays, they watched the human vessel begin moving toward the center of the system, its energy signature shifting into configurations that made Valkorian sensors struggle to maintain tracking. Tom, Zara said quietly as he prepared to leave for the transport bay. Will I see you again? He paused at the command center entrance and looked back at her with the same calm brown eyes that had first captured her attention 2 years ago. That depends on whether you still want a husband who has been lying to you since the day we met. You never lied about the important things, Zara replied. You never lied about caring for me or wanting to protect my people. Tom smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the simple trader who had crash-landed in Valkorian space. Then yes, you will see me again. I promise. 4 hours later, the Devourer fleet engaged the outer Valkorian perimeter. The battle was as hopeless as every previous encounter. Valkorian energy weapons passed harmlessly through the massive dark entities, while defensive shields collapsed under waves of consuming force that drained power from the defending ships themselves. Within minutes, the entire outer fleet began falling back in disorder as their vessels were systematically absorbed by the advancing Devourers. Tom's ship moved steadily forward through the chaos, somehow untouched by the consuming waves that destroyed everything around it. As it approached the center of the Devourer formation, the vessel began to change, unfolding like a flower made of crystallized starlight. What is that ship doing? Admiral Yan asked in amazement as sensor readings showed impossible energy patterns flowing between the transformed vessel's components. Tom's voice came across all communication channels, calm and professional. Beginning harmonic disruption sequence. All Valkorian vessels, maintain minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers from my position. The human ship continued its transformation, revealing technology that seemed more like controlled physics than mechanical engineering. Streams of coherent energy flowed between floating components, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Then Tom activated his countermeasures. The effect was immediate and absolute. Across the entire Devourer fleet, the massive dark entities simply stopped moving. Their consuming auras faded to nothing. Their impossible hulls lost cohesion and began drifting apart like smoke in a gentle breeze. Within minutes, 1,237 planet-eating monsters had become nothing more than inert matter floating harmlessly in space. The silence on the command center was broken by General Vex's stunned whisper. How? Tom's ship was already folding back into its original configuration as his voice answered across the communication channels. The Devourers exist as quantum consciousness sustained by specific harmonic frequencies. Disrupt those frequencies, and they lose cohesion. It took my people 800 years of study to develop the countermeasures, but they are completely effective. Tom, Zara said into her communication device, her voice shaking with emotion she could barely control. Come home. When Tom returned to the command center an hour later, he found Zara waiting alone. The military staff had withdrawn to give them privacy, though General Vex's parting glare suggested this conversation was far from over. "How much of what you told me was true?" Zara asked without preamble. "All the important parts," Tom replied. "I do love you. I do want to spend my life helping you rule this empire. I am fascinated by your strength and wisdom. The only lies were about where I come from and what my people are capable of. And now." Tom took her crystalline hands in his human ones, marveling again at how perfectly they fit together despite their different natures. "Now I have a choice to make. The defense network will want me to disappear quietly and resume monitoring duties elsewhere. That is standard protocol after exposure. But this is my home now. These are my people. If you will have me, I want to stay and help you build something wonderful here." Zara's gravity field flickered with emotions too complex for words. "What about your people? Will they allow you to stay?" Tom smiled. "The defense network exists to protect developing civilizations. If I can do that job better by remaining here openly rather than hiding in the shadows, they will adapt. Besides, the Valkorian Empire is going to need guidance as it encounters other advanced species. Better to have a friend helping from within than a stranger watching from outside. So you will stay?" "Truly. For as long as you want me," Tom promised. "Though I should warn you, my people will probably want to establish formal diplomatic relations now that our existence is known. You are about to discover that the galaxy is far more complicated than anyone imagined." Zara laughed, a sound like crystal bells ringing in harmony. "I think I can handle complicated. After all, I managed to marry the most powerful being in the galaxy without even realizing it." "Not the most powerful," Tom corrected gently. "Just the most willing to use power to protect rather than conquer." As the twin suns set over Valkyr Prime, painting the crystal spires in shades of gold and purple, Queen Zara and her human husband stood together on the highest balcony of the palace. Around them, the Valkorian Empire celebrated survival and looked forward to a future that promised to be far more interesting than anyone had ever imagined. The age of humanity's hidden protection was ending, but the age of open cooperation between the species was just beginning.